So instantly I got another request to go on to fix a Football Manager tactic, but this time I think the tactic is already overpowered, but I'm going to have a look at his tactic. One of my friends from Discord as well went and said that his tactic, after seeing the previous video that was quite helpful, he asked me to go on to tweak his tactic for him to try and see just how good his tactic, or let's say where his tactic is going wrong. He went on to dominate Europe with this tactic using AC Milan, not this shape by the way, the current tactic that he's using, but then right now the tactic isn't as effective as it used to be. The tactic is not as consistent as it used to be, so he asked me to go on to give him some tips inside as to what we can go about changing in his tactic, and that's what we're going to do in this video today, how to transform, well, in this case, an overpowered tactic to a slightly more overpowered tactic. So this is the Conqueror tactic created by Megatron, and he went on to win multiple trophies with this tactic. And looking at the way it's shaped up and all the player roles that have been selected, player mentality and team instructions, I can already tell that this is an overpowered tactic. But for the time being, according to Megatron, he said the tactic is vaguely inconsistent, so you do get the odd 5-0 wins, 4-0 wins here and there, but once in a while you do get that odd defeat, which is like from out of the blue, something like that. So just a quick word to try and fix this tactic, because looking at it, I already like the shape and the role selection for this tactic, but it's going to go down to, or it's going to come down to the players that you have and if they are still suited to the tactic that you're playing, because you can have a good tactic that worked for a certain 11 that you had before, and then you've gone on to make changes and sign new players, and then the tactic is not going to be as effective because it was designed for a different team. So looking at Magnan, this is my AC Milan save by the way. We're almost getting sacked towards the end of the season. We're currently sitting in 7th place, so I haven't tested out this tactic with Milan yet, but Magnan as my goalkeeper is the first player that we're going to look at. If I have Magnan to be a goalkeeper, very good as a standard goalkeeper and a super keeper on defend, but you can see that he also has tendencies to play as a super keeper on support and attack. So if you do have a chance to switch your goalkeeper once in a while throughout the season, you can go on to switch player roles, like changing your goalkeeper from support to defend, from defend to support and attack, just to create some variation with how your team is going to play. But the most important thing that I noticed that I wanted to point out with this tactic is that it's a tactic that has a lot of players that are running. Starting from the, let me just take the goalkeeper back to super keeper on defend. Starting from the ball playing defender on defend duty, these two players are ball carriers. Your complete wing back on attack are also going to be running at the defense, going all the way into the attacking positions. Your roaming playmaker on support duty as well, they are not stationary players. So every player in this team, besides the central defender on defend, has been asked to run at defense relentlessly. They are always going to run at defense. The roaming playmaker, even the attacking midfielder on attack duty, is going to get forward. He is also a player that is capable of running at the defense. If he was on support, he's not going to run as much. So why am I mentioning this? By the way, your two advanced forward are also going to be running at the defense. I'm mentioning this because if you look at your in transition instruction here, your team has been asked to hold their shape. So when you have so many players selected that are running at the defense, holding shape is not really something I would recommend that you do, because your players are not going to obey that instruction. So there's a kind of confusion between what you're asking them to do as a team and what their individual roles role is telling them to do. Now the next tip I'm going to give to try and fix this tactic is to look at the defensive line. The defensive line is set to standard, but that means there is a huge gap between the advanced or the attacking midfielder here on attack and then the roaming playmakers and the complete wing backs on attack. What's great, including the defenders as well, so they are quite disconnected from everybody that is in front. So the good thing about this is that you have roaming playmaker on support, but your roaming playmaker on support duty, although he's going to venture far forward, you're asking your team to hold their shape. So we've taken that option off now. So it should help that your back line is not going to be so standard as it is, because there won't be that much of a gap. The movement is going to continue now. But in some games, I would recommend shifting the defensive line higher. If you're playing against a team that is a lot stronger than you, yeah, you can go with the standard defensive line. But since you're Milan in the Italian Serie A, you could be one of the better teams. You can shift to play with a higher defensive line and try to impose yourself on the opposition. After all, you're using an attacking mentality. The next tip is also similar to the one I just mentioned. If you're a stronger team as Milan, you can play with complete wing backs on attack I also recommend complete wingbacks on support, as they will also try to defend a bit as they're trying to get forward on attack. So complete wingbacks on support are also helpful. But if you're coming up against a team that is a lot stronger than you, like in Champions League, you're meeting teams that are foreign, or even if you're playing against a team that is good on the counter attack, because the issue with complete wingbacks is that they're so adventurous. They're going to get all the way up. They're more adventurous than wingbacks on attack. So your complete wingbacks are going to actually forget that they're supposed to defend. So if you have them on attacking duty, it's even worse. So when you play teams that are sitting deep and are very good at the counter attack, you're going to want to play with wingbacks instead, because it helps you sort of defend. Because if your players are all the way up there, you just have ball playing defenders and then a central defender to close the defense. And since you're a roaming playmaker, there's nobody here that is actually holding the midfield. So I would suggest changing one of them as well. Since you have one roaming playmaker, you can have another, just to stand in the space and be like a holding midfielder. But if your wing backs are all the way up, there are only 3 players defending, and that's not very helpful. You could be caught on the counter attack very easily. You need to have a way to try and stop the opposition's counter attack and then recycle possession and continue pressing them. And one more tip, as I mentioned, for the goalkeeper, in Mike Nan being a super keeper on defend, he's capable of playing multiple roles. So he can play super keeper on defend or support or attack. You can go on to make those changes. This also applies to your strikers. So there's a striker here in Julian Alvarez, and who is this other guy? Let's say Julian Alvarez. Okay, Leao. Let me try Leao in here. Julian Alvarez and Rafael Leao. These are 2 strikers that can play the advanced forward role very differently. But what you would like to do when you're playing in game is try to switch your player roles. So let's say you have Rafael Leao playing as an advanced forward on attack today, and Alvarez playing as an advanced forward on attack today. In a different game, you can have Julian Alvarez play as a false 9 on support, and then Rafael Leao play as an advanced forward on attack. The shape of the tactic doesn't really change, but your team is going to, or let's say your players are going to behave differently. Okay, the shape might change slightly, where Alvarez is going to be slightly in the AM position, and then Atleti to have a lot of freedom to roam. And then you have one striker in Leao, but Alvarez is still going to get into the box and try to finish off chances and also create chances. But that creates a kind of variety, and then it makes it more difficult for your opposition to try and defend against your team, as they don't know exactly what to expect and who to mark. The core of the tactic is going to remain the same. You can keep the attacking mentality, but try to make random changes inside the game and then see how you can tweak your team to try and make it come out differently, even though you're playing with the same core system. So this is the way you can tweak an overpowered tactic to be slightly more overpowered and help you get consistent results in Football Manager 2023. I hope you found this useful. If you did, leave a like on it, and also let me know in the comment section if you have more Football Manager tactics that you want me to look at for you. If you have inconsistent tactics, you can let me know in the comment section. We can have a look at your tactic and try to find subtle solutions to try and fix them. So I'll catch you much later with another video. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already subscribed. I'll see you in the next video.